You ever see someone so convinced of their own power, they dig their own grave without realizing it? That's exactly what happened the night our HOA president, Patricia, better known as Karen, decided my pickup truck didn't belong in her neighborhood. The truck wasn't some rusted junker or clunker blocking a driveway. It was a department-issued Ford F-150, polished, spotless, and parked legally in front of my house. But in Karen's world, anything she didn't approve of was a crime against humanity. It started on a Friday evening. I had just finished a 12-hour shift at the county sheriff's office. Exhausted, I pulled into my driveway, set my badge and radio on the counter, and looked forward to dinner with my wife. We barely sat down when I heard the distinct rumble of a diesel engine outside. Curious, I peeked through the blinds. There it was, a tow truck, its lights flashing, chains rattling, and standing right beside it, arms crossed, lips pursed tighter than a vice, was Karen. I stepped outside calmly, but inside my blood was boiling. Karen pointed at my truck like she was unveiling some grand crime. "This vehicle violates HOA regulations," she announced loudly, making sure the neighbors poke their heads out. "Commercial vehicles are not allowed to park overnight in this community." I almost laughed. "Commercial?" I repeated. "That's not a delivery van. That's a sheriff's department vehicle." But Karen wasn't backing down. "I don't care if it's the Queen of England's personal chariot," she snapped. "Rules are rules. This truck is being towed." The tow truck driver, clearly uncomfortable, shifted on his feet. "Ma'am, are you sure about this? This looks like official property." Karen waved him off. "Don't argue. Do your job." That was the moment I pulled out my badge. I didn't flash it with arrogance. I just held it up with a quiet kind of authority that silences a crowd. "This truck," I said slowly, "is county property. Touch it, and you're interfering with law enforcement equipment." The driver froze. His face went pale. "Sir, I didn't know. I'm not touching it. No way." He backed off immediately, hands raised. Karen, however, doubled down. "You can't intimidate me with props. This neighborhood has standards, and no one is above the HOA." That's when my wife stepped outside, phone in hand, already recording. Karen didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning of her unraveling. Karen's shrill voice cut through the night, echoing across the cul-de-sac. "This is my neighborhood, and your badge means nothing here," she barked, hands flailing like she was conducting an orchestra of chaos. The neighbors, drawn out by the commotion, gathered in small clusters along the sidewalks, whispering to one another. Some were amused, others horrified, but none dared intervene. I stood my ground, calm as ever, though inside I was calculating my next move. Karen had overstepped, and everyone could see it. My wife's phone camera caught every second. Karen's red face, the tow truck driver shrinking back, the neighbors with raised eyebrows. "Ma'am," I said evenly, "this truck is law enforcement property. You've already crossed a line by calling a tow on it. If you keep pushing, you're flirting with obstruction charges." That should have been enough. A normal person would have backed down. But Karen wasn't normal. She thrived on drama. She jabbed a finger in my chest, just short of contact. "You think you can threaten me with your little sheriff's badge? The HOA is the law here, and I'll fine you until you learn your place." Her words drew gasps from the crowd. A few neighbors even laughed nervously. The tow driver muttered, "Lady, I'm not touching this truck," and started winding up his chains. But Karen wasn't letting go. She lunged forward and slapped her hand on the hood of my truck, like she was claiming it. That's when I decided enough was enough. "All right," I said calmly, pulling out my radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 47. Can I get a patrol car to Oakwood Estates? Possible obstruction of county property." Karen's eyes widened. "You wouldn't dare!" My wife, still filming, laughed. "Oh, he dares." Within minutes, the familiar flash of blue and red lights turned the street into a stage. 2 patrol cars pulled up. Officers stepping out with that no-nonsense look Karen clearly wasn't used to facing. The crowd shifted, murmurs rippling through the air. Karen puffed herself up, desperate to regain control. "Officers, arrest him! He's intimidating me with his truck and his badge." The younger officer raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, the truck belongs to the county sheriff's department. Are you seriously trying to have it towed?" Karen stammered. "Yes, no. It violates HOA rules." The officer shot me a glance, clearly amused. I just folded my arms, letting Karen's own words bury her deeper. The neighborhood was no longer laughing. Quietly, they were outright chuckling at her meltdown, and that was only the second act of her humiliation. The officers didn't even try to hide their smirks. Karen, still red-faced and trembling with outrage, looked like a general who had lost control of her troops. The younger officer turned to the crowd. "Did anyone here witness this woman call a tow on county property?" Hands went up immediately. Half the block was ready to testify. My wife zoomed in with her camera, making sure every detail was captured. Karen's voice shook as she tried to shout over everyone. This is harassment! You're all ganging up on me because I care about this community. I stepped forward. Karen, caring about the community doesn't mean trying to tow law enforcement vehicles. That's not authority, that's abuse of power. The senior officer pulled out his notepad. Ma'am, we need your full name for the report. Karen crossed her arms defiantly. You can't make me give you anything. I'm the HOA president. I know my rights. Actually, the officer said patiently, if you interfere with government property, we can charge you. So yes, we can get your information, willingly or not. That cracked her facade. Karen's bravado faltered. Her eyes darted from the officers to the neighbors, then to my wife's camera. She realized too late this was spiraling beyond her control. Desperate, she tried one last angle. This man is lying. That truck isn't even real law enforcement property. It's just his personal car with a fake badge. The laughter that erupted from the neighbors nearly drowned her out. One of the officers shook his head, walked over to the truck, and pointed to the sheriff's department markings and official plates. It doesn't get more real than this. Karen's jaw dropped. For the first time all evening, she looked small. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. That's when my wife chimed in, voice dripping with satisfaction. Patricia, you're done. You tried to tow a sheriff's vehicle, lied to officers, and now the entire neighborhood's watching. How do you think this ends? The senior officer cleared his throat. Here's what's going to happen. We'll be filing a formal report about this incident. If county property had been towed, you'd be looking at obstruction charges. Since the driver didn't act, you might get lucky with just a warning. Karen's shoulders sagged. It was the first time I'd ever seen her defeated, and I almost felt sorry for her, almost. But what none of us knew then was that Karen wasn't finished. She had one more move left, and it was the one that would finally destroy her reputation for good. The crowd had begun to disperse, chuckling and shaking their heads, but Karen wasn't ready to let go. Even with the officers filing their notes, she stormed toward me, finger wagging furiously. You may have won tonight, she hissed, but I'll have you removed from this neighborhood. Sheriff or not, I'll see to it. The senior officer stepped between us. Ma'am, I strongly suggest you stop talking before you add threatening. An officer to the list. Karen froze, chest heaving, eyes darting wildly. Her arrogance had carried her this far, but the weight of her own words finally began to crush her. She turned back toward the tow truck driver, as if hoping for backup, but he had already climbed into his cab, muttering, "Not worth it," before driving away. The silence that followed was thick. My wife lowered her phone just enough to look at Karen directly. It's over. Everyone saw what you did. Everyone heard what you said. You can't spin this into a victory. But Karen tried anyway. She turned to the neighbors, raising her voice in one last desperate appeal. This is tyranny! You should all be outraged that a sheriff thinks he can break HOA rules and park whatever he wants. That's when old Mr. Henderson, who rarely spoke at meetings, called out from across the street. Patricia, it's a police vehicle. We want it here. Maybe if you stopped picking fights, you'd notice we feel safer having it around. The crowd erupted in nods and murmurs of agreement. Karen's face twisted as she realized the unthinkable. She had lost her audience. The same neighbors she lorded power over were now siding against her. The younger officer finished jotting down details and addressed the crowd. For the record, folks, if anyone has further issues with this HOA president, you can contact the county directly. Tonight's incident will be logged. Karen's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Her empire, built on intimidation and fines, was crumbling in front of her. I gave her a final look, calm and steady. Karen, the law doesn't bend for your ego. Remember that next time you think about crossing the line. With that, the officers wrapped up, and the neighbors slowly dispersed, whispering about what they'd just witnessed. By the next morning, the footage my wife recorded was circulating around the community group chat. By the end of the week, a petition to remove Karen as HOA president had already reached a majority. Her reign ended not with power, but with embarrassment, broadcast to everyone she once ruled. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more crazy HOA and Karen stories. Your support helps me bring you even wilder tales every week.